everyone, you're listening to She Leads with Carly. Our guest today is Angie Bastian, the founder of Angie's BoomChickaPop. So while you may not know who Angie is, I can guarantee you've had the famous BoomChickaPop popcorn. If not, then honestly I'm not sure what you're snacking on, but please go try it out. Anyway, we have an amazing chat about how she started Angie's BoomChickaPop with her husband. For them, it was honestly just about how to make money for their kids' college fund. Clearly, it turned out into something much, much more. So please take a listen and enjoy. Hello, Angie. I am so excited to have you on She Leads today. Thank you so much for joining. I really am so excited.
Thank you for having me, Carly.
Of course. So Angie, you are the founder of Angie's BoomChickaPop, as you can see in the background, which is an international snack brand that's really worth hundreds of millions of dollars and most well known for its popcorn, which is, by the way, I have it as well, and it's delicious. So, Angie, we'll get into that. It was founded in 2001 with your husband, Dan, you and your husband. But what I love to do is take me back to when you were in college. You went to Goshen College, and you got a degree in nursing, and you ended up getting a master's in nursing from Emory a few years later. But from my understanding, you didn't even know that college was in the picture. So take me to this whole process, like why nursing, and yeah, kind of this time in your life navigating your future.
Well, thanks I rarely go back that far, but we're happy to go back that far. I grew up in a small community and on a small Mennonite farm. My grandparents were Amish. My mom and dad were Mennonite, and we lived in the back of my grandparents' farm for a while, and in a trailer. And so my beginnings were very humble. My parents were married when they were 18 and 19 and had me when they were, when my mom was 19 and my dad was 20. And, my dad went to 2-year business school and, developed a career in business. And my mom kind of worked in, different places. And we had a small farm. And, nobody in my family, in my immediate family, ever really talked about college. They never said or set that expectation like that I should go to college. And I loved school. I loved to go to school, and I loved everything about school. I know I was a complete nerd in that way. And I never understood why kids didn't want to go to school. That was not me. Yeah. But when high school was done, I went to work for my dad. My dad had a small business, and I became his sort of office manager. I did inventory. I typed for him. I did all the secretarial stuff. I ran and got parts, everything. And during that time, I went to visit my aunt and uncle that lived in Colorado, and my aunt was a nurse, and my uncle was a school teacher. It would be my dad's brother. And they looked at me and they said, "Why aren't you in college?" And I was like, well, I don't know. Do you think I could do it? And she goes, "Of course you can. Of course you can do it." And I was like, "Oh, okay. Somebody thinks I can do it." And that's all I needed. And I just, then it was like, what do I want to do? And I didn't really know. But I just enrolled in what I did know, which was Goshen College, and that was close to my home. It was a Mennonite liberal arts college, and it had a nursing program that was 100% pass rate on the boards, and it was really a good program. And I said, well, I'll just sign up for nursing. That's what my aunt did, and maybe I'll do it. I never really wanted to be a nurse. Yeah. Like some people know when they're little what they want to be. It was never me. Yeah. But I did it, and I had a lot of good friends that were nurses and actually loved it.
Angie, that's such a cool, story, and just the fact that you needed that one person to tell you, you know what, you can go to college, and you needed that one voice in your head and being like, why not? Like, I can. And so it's very interesting. It's so cool. I love it.
Well, Carly, I think what that taught me and what I remember about this is kids, as smart as they can be, and I know I'm pretty smart. I'm above average. I'm not brilliant, pretty sure, but above average. And what they need is somebody, because they don't think about things in the way, if they don't know, right? So they sometimes just need somebody to say something to them, like they can imagine that they would be in college, and that kind of validation or narration of what could be or what's possible. Kids can't think that way. I mean, they're really fairly concrete in their thinking. And even me, I graduated a year early, and I was only 17, but I still wasn't able to think about, my future could be different than what it is in the present,
Yeah.
So I think it's really important for adults to narrate the possibilities for kids.
Yes, I agree. Even planting that seed, that little seed
Yes.
is enough for it to grow, and then I totally agree. So
Yeah.
coming out of college, you're a nurse practitioner. At this moment, so walk me through this moment where I assume you meet Dan and you guys start dating, getting married. At this moment, did you have a passion for nursing? Did you envision yourself being a nurse for the rest of your life, or what did you kind of view a future versus in the moment? Like, how did you balance the future versus right now?
Yeah, well, and I would say I came out of undergrad as a nurse, went straight into ICU and went into ERs and worked there and worked with handicapped kids and for 6 years, and then worked in open heart recovery. And I just kept trying to grow and learn and experiment with different. That's what's really beautiful sort of about nursing, is you can do all different kinds of things within the profession. And then I kind of built enough confidence in myself that I was like, well, I could probably do grad school. I'm going to go to grad school and become a nurse practitioner. And at the time, I had worked with a lot of patients that were recovering from heart surgery or a heart attack, and a lot of them were depressed. And so I got interested in why that happened and what was going on. And so what I thought is I'd go back to grad school in mental health or psychiatric nursing, but I hadn't really understood that to be a separate specialty, and it really wasn't at the time. It was just you could be a therapist sort of nurse, but not a nurse practitioner that was, doing specific clinical and diagnostic work. And I really wanted to do that. And so, because I didn't think I'd be a very good therapist, because I don't sit still for very long and I want to tell people what to do, and therapists don't do that. So, coming out of grad school, I was interested in multicultural healthcare, and I got my psychiatric nursing degree with a gerontology co-degree, and sat for my boards and decided to go to New Mexico. And I went to New Mexico and worked in a private hospital that had the contract for Indian Health Service and the Navajo tribe and the Zuni tribe, and that's where I met my husband. He was teaching school in Gallup, New Mexico, at the high school, Gallup, coaching baseball, and I was working in the hospital. And he was living with his uncle, and he was from Minnesota, and his uncle was the CFO of the hospital. And there were just a bunch of random people out there working in the systems in Gallup, New Mexico, and we just kind of hung out, and that's where we met.
And then so Dan's a teacher, you are a nurse practitioner, and then listening to other podcasts with you, tell me now, founding Angie's BoomChickaPop. So tell me about how it was more so just thinking about your future for your kids and really like, okay, we need to start planning. So tell me that story a bit.
Well, we had 2 kids in New Mexico, and then little kids, and you're scrambling to be a good parent, and you're scrambling to make your career grow. And we eventually moved back. We first moved to my home, which was Sarasota, Florida, for 3 years to be close to my family. And then we decided to move to Minnesota, and where Dan's hometown is, and that's Mankato. And when we got there, it was like we were both just restless, and our children were 3 and 5 at the time, and we just said, let's start something, let's do something. We need to like get going on a college fund for these kids, because education was so important to me and so important to Dan. And so, we hadn't started yet. So we just bought this kettle and this tent, and we used a credit card to pay for it. And we were like, well, we could do this on the weekends and in the evenings, and at fairs and festivals and street carnivals and farmers markets, and we can bring the kids along and we can teach them how to make change and work alongside of us, and it'll be fun, right? Like, so that's how it started in the fall of 2001. And we started popping kettle corn in front of grocery stores and on street corners.
Yeah. And at baseball games and everything.
Right. Baseball games, Minnesota Vikings, football games, stuff like that. So, anywhere anyone would let us pop.
So first, when did you guys realize, like, okay, this is actually something, like we can quit our jobs and we can devote our lives to this now?
Well, we did that sort of incrementally.
Okay.
We did that when we got an opportunity to sell in a local grocery store chain in Minneapolis, St. Paul. And that's when Dan and I talked about it, and we just decided my job can probably support the family. Yeah. And he can maybe quit teaching and go full force with the business. And so we were for 3 years sort of concessionaires, going around, and we were licensed as a mobile food unit. And then in 2004, we found a commercial kitchen, we bought some indoor equipment, and he started full time.
Wow.
And then we started building the business. I kept working as a nurse and doing sort of the books on the side and doing the marketing piece, and he started building the operations and did most of the sales, and meeting with people. And it wasn't until 2011 when we took private equity money that they said, we're investing in you and Dan, and so we kind of expect you to be there full time too.
Yeah.
And I had really worked my nursing time down to just a day or two a week. And that's the moment I was like, well, okay. I had 28 years of nursing. I thought that was a pretty good career, and I'd be willing to try something new and learn as fast as I could how to be a business leader instead of a healthcare leader.
Amazing. So first, a lot of people have these ideas, but there's a difference between having an idea and then actually getting started. And so I think I want to know any advice you have for people who have these ideas, but almost like, okay, let me see if there's something there. Like, you guys bought the kettle corn machine, or you bought that machine and you tested it and you iterated and tried seeing where it could stick. So what advice do you have for people to like actually get started and going and testing?
Well, since I didn't know how to write a business plan, neither did Dan, right?
Yeah.
Like, we had no idea. We just jumped way ahead of ourselves, and what I've seen in retrospect, as I've mentored a lot of, entrepreneurs with great ideas, is that they pause in the beginning, maybe a little too long, to just get this idea perfect and the business plan perfect and everything covered, and all their projections just right, and they haven't sold a single thing yet, and they haven't tested it, and they haven't done anything, but they have a perfect business plan, plan that's going to change tomorrow. I'll just tell you that. So I would just say, move faster from idea to execution, to test the market, to see if the product is actually relevant, to see if you actually like doing what this is, or if consumers have feedback for you, because I guarantee you, they will have feedback. You can think you have the most perfect product, and they will tell you why it's not perfect, and then you need time to like figure out how to create something that people want. And you may think you may be ahead of the consumer market. You may be behind if you haven't been watching trends carefully enough, and you're not going to know that until you get out there and start trying.
Yeah. And you guys, you and Dan are both the epitome of the idea that entrepreneurship can really be learned. You don't have to,
Yes.
you don't have to study it. You don't have to learn about it really to dive into it. And so do you think, like, talk a little bit about that, but also do you think that that kind of gave you an advantage, not knowing and really just like diving in and going with instinct maybe over like what the books say?
Well, and I wouldn't know what the books say, right? Like, so I don't, the books are probably right about a lot of things.
Yeah.
We just didn't know what we were wrong about, and we made a lot of mistakes that were probably expensive mistakes that a lot of people could avoid if they, you know, if they had, you know, foundational information that we didn't have. But we didn't let that stop us. And I think, you know, just I think everybody needs to be aware that the odds are against you, you know, no matter what. And so you just have to reconcile with that and say, you know, the perseverance, the grit, the fortitude, the decision that you make, whether you're a learned entrepreneur or you're learning by experience, it is the perseverance that will get you through. I mean, the learning in itself is helpful, but it takes some grit to make it happen. And that's where I think that's where maybe, you know, we had enough of that to get us through.
Yeah.
You know.
Do you think that grit, because I think common among a lot of entrepreneurs is that grit, because as you said, it's not easy. Right. There are bumps in the road, there are challenges, and it's really about persevering. Do you have any tips to be to persevere a lot and have that grit? Is that something that you could practice and learn, or is this something that really you have within you?
No, I think it's absolutely learned, and I would say I would call it, I use my nursing brain, because when honestly, you know, as a nurse, you sometimes, like, I would work for 12-hour shift and not pee, not once, you know, because it was too busy. And I just didn't even think about it until I was done. I was like, oh my goodness, I didn't go to the bathroom the whole 12 hours. So, I mean, that may be sort of a crude way of explaining perseverance. But what it is it's about, you know, sort of self-sacrificing for the goal or the good of something else. And so, if you don't believe your business is worth doing, you're probably not going to sacrifice some of those things that maybe when it gets really hard to do. So it's really important that you have some agreement. And I think for Dan and I as partners, you know, in this thing together, we sort of had agreement that this was pretty important for us to continue to do. But some days he would be like, I'm ready to give up. And on other days, I would be like, why are we doing this? And I think that's why it was helpful to have each other, because on those days when I was ready to give up, he'd go, I got this, you know, I'll take over. And we had some role flexibility, or I would say he would just be spent, like he was like fried and had a migraine. And I would say, I've got this, like I've got this phone call, I'll do this meeting, you know. So we had this flexibility and our own little team partnership that we then grew. And that's another thing I think entrepreneurs sometimes get wrong. They hold onto things way too tight because that's the only way they want it done the way they want to do it, and they think they're the only ones that can do it. And I think when you're moving from, you know, as an entrepreneur, you're the janitor and you're the CEO at the same time. And if you can't let go of, you know, a couple of those tasks and teach someone else how you want it to be done, you're going to stifle your organization. You're going to stifle yourself. And so entrepreneurship, I believe, is a series of letting go. It's knowing everything and then handing it off and trusting that you have brought the right people on to help you, and that you trust the people that you've brought on to help you, and you trust your partnerships, and you trust people to be good and to do what they need to do. And that's what I think makes a successful organization.
Yeah. Wow, Angie, I love that. I think that's you gave so many lessons in that answer, even starting with perseverance and almost recognizing that you're creating something bigger than yourself, and like what you're creating can impact hundreds. So like that should be getting you through it. And then obviously like hiring and the ability to let go. I think that's very, very important. And I could see that standing in the way for sure. So
well, and it's and letting go is not letting go of perseverance. It is just a different way. I mean, I do think entrepreneurs feel sometimes like they have to do it themselves, and that's what perseverance is. But I don't think that's what perseverance is.
Yeah, no, it's completely two separate things. Do you have advice in terms of like, did you struggle to let go and give the reins off to someone else to do things where, I don't know, you have your own,
yeah. And yeah, it's hard. Yeah, because you want them to do it the way you want it done, right? Yeah. Like you're so identified with your company or your product and what you've created. And so I think, we had a fairly long trajectory. It was 16 years. And so we had time to let go in incremental pieces,
Amazing. So Angie, I want you to discuss, so obviously She Leads is all about the female leader. And so I want to know, as a female founder, you're with your husband, you founded with your husband, but I want to know, in those early stages, was there ever a, feeling like, okay, I'm the female founder, and maybe when, like, for instance, getting funding by VC firms or whatnot, did you ever feel like, okay, Dan, you take this over because I'm a female, maybe they'll respect you more? Or do you ever come across these, like, dichotomies and how you dealt with it?
It's a reality of female-led businesses that they don't get the same amount and level of funding that male-led organizations. And, there are a lot of things in place that are currently in place, and a lot of female-funded organizations, female funding mechanisms, oriented mechanisms that are in place now that weren't in place, 10, 12 years ago. But so I see it changing. And yes, there were times when I was the only woman at the table at the boardroom, or the only woman at the table at an investor meeting. And, it can be a little intimidating. But, I think all things are a matter of perspective. So what can be intimidating can also be my advantage, right? Like, so I am the only woman at the table. Yeah. So I'm the only voice that is unique and different in a very dramatic way. And so I use that as a, sort of motivation for me to assert myself. And I would also say that I never felt sort of maligned because I had my husband there and someone was listening to him, or was willing to fund, like turn to them and turn to him, or my brother-in-law was our CFO. And, because God knows I don't know a whole lot about finance. My expertise is sort of people and branding. So, I was fine. If it takes my brother-in-law and my husband to get us funded and us to perpetuate a female-oriented consumer brand that I could use my voice in a whole different way, okay, I'll use whatever asset I have. So I think it's true that it's hard for women to get funded, and I was one of those women that I didn't care. If it took my husband and my brother-in-law to help us get funding, I was happy for that to happen.
Yeah, and I think what you said, like the gap is slowly closing, but it's still there. Mm-hmm. It's a reality, but it is slowly closing. But I think even like the advice to other females, it's more so being able to like switch it also, like switch it being like, I am the only female. Like that's a value. I can provide my value in the room right now as the only female. So I think that's something that, we can take away and implement. So
well, and here's the other thing. Because of that, you can then challenge your team and say, look around, like where we need to hire more diversity in our organization. Where can we start? And, that when we hired a senior VP of operations, the next 3 major senior hires he did, because we simply talked about it, we're all women. We had like a woman run our plant. We had a woman senior VP of supply chain. He went out and did it.
Incredible.
So, you just have to tell people what you want and they'll go do it. If they can find the talent and the talent's there.
Yeah. And then the next step is not even having to tell them, and then they do it.
Right.
It's already done.
Right.
So
but you first have to tell them. I think a lot of folks are not used to it. Just sort of maybe if I bring this back in the same way that I, as a kid, didn't realize I could go to college. These guys are just used to doing it the way they do it until you tell them. They're like, oh, most people are like, oh, okay, sure. Like I didn't think about it.
Yeah.
They never notice that there's only one woman in the boardroom. They're getting it now, but it's. But there's no reason not to speak it and not to ask for it.
Definitely. I think that's very, very valuable advice for sure. So I'm wondering, Angie's BoomChickaPop, it got acquired by Conagra Brands in 2017. So how was that process for you, and really kind of giving it, did you still view it as like my baby that I'm giving up, or talk me through that process? And then also I'd love to know, where is Angie today? What are you up to today, and what brings you that same joy that Angie's BoomChickaPop brings or brought?
Yeah. Well, the sale to Conagra was sort of the climax to a journey of investor participation. So we first took investors in small private equity out of Boston in a minority position, and when we did that, we understood that what they do is to add value and then get their appreciation out of the business. And so we knew that they would sell. And at that point, that would have been 2014. And we thought, well, maybe a strategic buyer would buy us at that point. Yeah. But private equity came in again, a larger private equity company, and bought the whole thing. And we reinvested and sat on the board. And so it meant that our whole team could stay together again throughout the investment thesis that they had, which was always sort of 3 to 5 years before they turn a brand. Yeah. And so we knew we were probably going to be together another 3 years. But with that in mind, we knew that eventually it would sell. So, and we were transparent with our employees. We provided granted equity shares to our employees, so that if we had success, that our employees would have success. And so everyone was working. It wasn't a surprise when we sold to Conagra. It was a celebration. And it was exciting because we had created Angie's BoomChickaPop, which was a female-oriented brand with a female voice that celebrated, something a little different on the salty snack aisle than potato chips, and sort of, or a kid's something. This was, I felt like, equal representation of women on the salty snack shelf, and that's in an empowering, positive way. And so, I was so excited when we had a large company like Conagra that was interested in the brand, in the positioning, in the messaging to the consumer, and the consumer, got it and loved the product. So it was sort of like letting go of my baby that grew up and went off to a really good college. Okay, that's what it felt like to me. So I was ready to sort of step away and let go.
I like that analogy.
And it will always be mine, right? It still has my name. It will still always be mine in my head. So, I want it to be successful. I want it to thrive out there in the world, and I'll do whatever I can to help in that way.
Yeah. And then for you today, I know you're also involved in investing. So talk a bit about that.
So today, I stayed on with Conagra for about 2 years as a consultant on the brand. And during those 2 years was a transition. And I would just say that transitions for entrepreneurs aren't necessarily easy when there's, in this way, because you're so busy and you're so used to going full force that it took us a while to take a step back and say, okay, now what kind of purposeful things do we really want to do? And so what we did was we invested in some small brands. We participated in this sort of endeavor to create a for-profit organization out of a nonprofit organization that funds community economic development in Nicaragua, and they're selling cassava flour, and their profit will go back to farmers, and they built a school, and they built a hotel, and they're educating people and building roads, and so we get to do some fun things like that, and get to make investments in people, and
Yes.
we've been doing some investments and mentoring and serving on some boards.
I love it. I think that it's so great. I love to hear that. So, okay, Angie, for final 2 questions, I have to ask.
Here goes.
So one, what's a passion or hobby that you have that's just unrelated to any of your work?
I love to garden. I love to get my hands in the dirt. I'm looking out my window right here, and I'm growing all kinds of weird foods, and I love it. I just love it. And when our life was so busy and crazy, I didn't have time to garden, because gardening takes a lot of effort and a lot of time.
Yeah, I know.
So
during this time, I think a lot of people have taken up gardening. I think it's a meditative. It's a great space to go. So I love that.
It's a great lesson too.
Yeah.
It's a really good lesson in life, right?
Yeah. Okay. So final question, which, by the way, I've loved this so much. So thank you for coming. But final question is, what's a talent? What's your hidden talent? What's a talent, weird, fun talent that you have that no one really knows about? So I'm gonna go first.
Okay.
So what I usually do is I throw blueberries and I catch them in my mouth. But for you, it's a special occasion. I'm gonna try with Angie's BoomChickaPop. All right.
All
We're
right.
gonna see how this goes. Okay.
All right, Carly. Let's see it.
Okay. So here we go.
Okay.
This could really go one of two ways. Okay. Oh my God, let's go. Wow, that went well. I will say I practiced a few times before. I practiced a few times before just because blueberries is a little heavier, so it's all right. It worked.
Right,
well.
yeah.
All right, what's your hidden talent?
That's exciting, because I wasn't sure you were going to bring popcorn or blueberries.
I brought popcorn. I did it.
Popcorn. My secret hidden talent, and honestly, this is going to sound so gross, I can pick up things with my toes.
Okay, that's not. What's the weirdest? Can you pick up anything? Is this like a?
I can pick up peanuts. I can pick up trash with my toes.
I love
Put
it.
it in the trash can.
Yeah,
right.
I think that's a great talent. I think it comes in handy often. So well done. Well,
Cool.
well, Angie, I want to say thank you again. You've taught me so much. I'm excited for others to see and just learn from you. So really, thank you so much for coming.
Well, thank you for having me, Carly. Good luck.
Of course.